Slow down, lay your burden down.
Hey, welcome to Divergent with Dan Dunford. That's me, Dan Dunford. I host this thing. Hope things are going well. Hope you're having a good week wherever you are. Probably in New York, but maybe not. I don't know. Maybe in Europe or California or whatever. You know, around. Anyway, that's probably enough of that. So this week is a little bit of a different vibe on the interview. Sat down with a good friend of mine, Aleks Karjaka, who is a clarinetist around the city, but is also an extremely talented and a successful photographer. Has his own company, has his own studio, and really, as you'll hear in the interview, he's kind of had his own businesses for most of his life. Really, I met him on a gig in New Jersey, and I had already seen his his photographs a number of times, and was really, he's just a really nice guy, really interesting guy. And I enjoyed talking to him when I met him, and after later in the year, I decided to reach out to him and see if he'd be willing to talk to me, and of course he was. So went out to his apartment / studio in Queens, and we had a good time talking about art and music and just reaching for things that you want, reaching beyond where you are now, and reaching for things that you think you can get. And it's weird. Okay, it's weird doing this podcast with active working musicians here in New York, and because people are generally careful about what they say, and there's nothing wrong with that. You do have to be careful and not say things that can come back to bite you later. Upon, like, when I went in to edit this interview, I heard myself saying things that man, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about them now. And I didn't cut any of it out because I wanted to provide an honest picture of kind of where I sit as in my own career as a musician. I don't really hide the fact that I want to move on to and do really cool and interesting things, and move up the ranks, playing and performing and whatever it is. But yeah, I'm pretty honest in, it's interesting. I talk more in this interview than I customarily do, just because it felt like a comfortable space, and me and Alex are just kind of having a good time and just talking back and forth about our honest feelings about different things in our careers and in music and in art. And it ended up in a situation where I'm a little more open and vulnerable about my insecurities about my own career and moving forward into whatever is next. And I was a little startled by I didn't remember some of these things going into some of these things, and made for interesting. Let me put it this way: I'm beyond grateful for everything that I have the opportunity to do as a musician. But there's a lot of things that pop up in your head at times when you feel like maybe you're not progressing the way you would like to, or you see other people's success, and you know, like I said, it's not about jumping on other people's corners or taking their work, because everyone should have work to do. And it, man, I'm kind of talking myself in circles here, but yeah, like I said, it's interesting listening back to it, hearing how open I was about it in context. But yeah, I'm really grateful for everything I can do. But these things just they eat at you sometimes when you're really hoping and working towards something more, and really got into some heavy things with Aleks, and really happy about it. Like I said, I didn't take any of this stuff out, even though I'm not so sure about some of what I said. But I think, like I said a little bit earlier, I think it provides a pretty open, vulnerable, honest look at some of the things that a freelancer might think about when when no one else is around, and it's just you and your instrument staring at a music stand, working on fundamentals or whatever it is. Anyway, more back to Aleks. Like I said, great guy, great photographer, wonderful clarinetist. Really enjoyed talking to him, and I hope you enjoy the interview. So when I went to talk to him, we don't have music for the end of this interview like I normally do. I'll be like splashing some of Alex's photos across the Facebook page this week, because I'm just a big fan of his work. But also, if you call him up or send him an email or talk to him and mention this interview, Aleks has agreed to cut or put a 20% discount on some studio time for you. And he makes really great artful photographs, and I pretty much can guarantee that you won't be disappointed with what you end up with. But like I said, mention this interview, get 20% off on a studio session with Aleks. Check out his stuff on Facebook, on his website. If you search Karjaka, it's Karjaka, Karjaka Studios. Like I said, on Facebook, check it out. You can find links there to his work, his website, his Twitter, Instagram, etc. And I really hope you enjoy the interview. And yeah, have a good week.
Slow down.
Yeah, no, I. That's the other thing is smoking makes this a lot more difficult. I end up coughing like all over the place. I have to like control like where I cough, because like sometimes I'll start coughing a lot, and the person will just keep on talking, and I'm just like I have to like fiddle with it, and it's a pain in the ass. I mean, I could totally fix that by just not smoking, which
Probably a good idea.
Probably a good idea anyway.
Yeah, switch over to vaping if anything.
Yeah, there's this dude. He's the lead trombone on King and I,
Mm-hmm.
and I play with him about once a week generally, and so over at the Union.
Yeah.
And but he vapes like constantly, and he's like, yeah, man, this is French dude, so of course he has to be like
Yeah.
putting something into his lungs constantly. Yeah, stereotypes. But yeah, he's like, yeah, man, you should really do it. I feel so much better. But of course, every time we're playing at the Union, he always bums a cigarette off of me, or one of the other, like his other friend who plays, has the trombone chair on Fiddler on the Roof, and like So it's all this.
Well, Andrea,
Yeah. Oh yeah, of course you did the photos for that. For them. That's right. I forget. Of course, how would I forget about that? You know all these people. Awesome. So with that, well, I guess we'll get rolling into you and stop talking about me because I'm far less interested.
Hardly.
So you're an interesting situation because like. There's a lot of musicians, you know, they graduate from college, they do their master's degree, whatever, whatever schooling they need to do, and they move to whatever city or stay in whatever place, and they do their, you know, they start to try and work as a musician, and you know, as anyone, with a few exceptions of guys who who happened into the right place at the right time and had the playing to back it up. Like generally, it takes a while to really establish yourself as a good working freelancer. But like the reason I'm saying this is because like a lot of times you end up in a situation where you'll take a day job, or at least a part-time job of some sort, whether that's waiting tables or barista work or whatever, office job, whatever, and you use that and you play at night and you practice as much as you can, and it's a kind of a difficult situation because you're exhausted from working, but you still have to practice or you still have to perform. Now you're a little bit different in that instead of just like taking a day job per se, while that was part of it, one of the things you did was start your own company.
Yeah.
which seems like a better idea, and a company in which you interact with musicians
daily,
every day.
Yeah,
literally every day. You interact with the people that you either currently play with or want to be playing with.
Exactly.
Like on a daily basis. It's it's like you're creating a feeder system, and also you play clarinet extremely well.
Thank you.
So like, why did you go? We've talked, when I came over before to kind of do the pre-interview talk, we talked about this, and kind of just, but why go in the entrepreneurial direction as opposed to just trying to make enough to get by in order to, until you can, make it, quote unquote, as a musician or whatever it is?
It's a great question. I think the big thing with that is I hate the idea of like, time is our most valuable. It is our most valuable commodity if you look at it from that perspective. Like, so spending all your time working at something you're not passionate about or you're not enjoying, like it's like that's for me that's soul crushing. Like doing mindless like when I first came out here to New York, I had several mentors say like, look, just get your 9-to-5 job or get your part-time job and just coast through that, so when you can get home you can do what you love, you can practice, you can go to rehearsals. And that's no different than, that's like saying, all right, we're going to put a third of your life on hold and waiting, like, and just kind of mindlessly work, meanwhile doing the stuff that you love at night or in the afternoons or the weekends. Or it didn't make sense because I'm the kind of guy that I can't just do things. I'm a very, I'm not like hyperactive, but I'm a very, I guess what you'd call aggressive, in the sense that, like, look, if I'm going to spend time doing something, it's got to build towards something. It's got to be fulfilling for me and have an impact on my world and the world around me, the people that I work with. So the idea of spending time, like, being a barista, being like, while it's like, I can't, I'm making coffee, right? But it's not really developing my clarinet skills. It's not really developing my artistic vision of what I want to see. So it's like, like the whole thing, I hate the idea. Like, we're so conditioned, especially in this country, to like do additional work just to get by and not being really fulfilled with it. And I think the market's a little different now.
Yeah, it's in the
previous decades, let's say 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s to an extent,
Sure.
You get a college degree,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe in the musicians world, you get a master's degree, and you're set.
You didn't even need the doctorate.
You don't need the doctorate. I mean, and outside of the musician world, you get a college degree. It had this huge cachet to it, and now we're in a position, and it was easier to get a job. Maybe
Yeah.
doing whatever. There were more opportunities because the percentage of people getting college degrees was smaller.
Sure.
I mean, that's a thing that often kind of gets forgotten about when people are like, oh, well, college degrees are worthless. Well, I mean, everyone's getting a college degree now. Like, what's
Exactly. It's become the litmus test. It's the standard.
Now it's really unusual to meet someone who at least didn't go to college, at least for some point, least at some point. And so, like, this idea, like, you can go, whether it's music or what some people might view as a comparably useless degree, like classic literature, or what. Sorry if there's any classic lit majors listening. I don't know why you'd be listening to this podcast, but you graduate, and what can you do with that? Unless you have experience, like performing as a musician, like generally most of the time someone will be like, well, you need more school. You sound good, but
Right.
you just need more training, or you need more of this, you need more of that, and so you end up with a huge swath of 24 to 28-year-olds who have 2 degrees and possibly started on a third one, are $120,000 or more, often more, in debt, and job field in which, when you're starting out, you're going to make $50 a service, maybe.
Yeah, and a slice of pizza.
Yeah, or you'll be doing it, quote unquote, for the exposure,
the experience, blah blah blah.
Well, I mean, and
there's nothing wrong with
there
that.
is nothing wrong with it. I mean, a lot of my first few years here, I did a lot of, and I've been fortunate enough to be able to kind of move away from that now. Where unless I really, really enjoy the people, I don't do the free gig. Like, I don't have to, like that, but there is a time and a place for that, and there is some value to it. Anyway,
absolutely.
Long digression, but to bring it back to your point of like working, it's become so common for all these people to just slog through something that, well, it pays my rent so I can stay in New York, but I came to New York to play music. What is the point of staying in New York? I could make coffee or wait tables in Dubuque, and make the same amount of money, and also but save a lot of it because my rent is so much cheaper.
Yeah, but it's also Dubuque.
I mean, but if you're only making coffee, why does it matter whether you do it in New York or Dubuque? I mean, there are flaws in that argument.
Definitely.
I understand that. But my point is if you're not really actively working towards putting together what it is you want to do, you might as well be living in Dubuque.
Well, that's the real kicker, isn't it? Like, I mean, for the big thing, whether it's like, I mean, regardless of photography, clarinet, or whatever entrepreneurial thing I'm doing, I have friends who are probably listening to this right now, and they know exactly what I'm going to ask. But like the first thing I ask is like, what's the dream? What do you want to do? Like, and it sounds very, very grandiose or like ethereal or whatever. But for me, I'm genuinely interested, because that dream that you had at 8 when you first picked up your violin, or when you're 12 and you first like tried the trombone, like that dream still, like, it stays with you through college. It might get a little convoluted, and then you get out into the real world, but at the end of the day, when you come into like a place like New York, that's what keeps you going. That's like doing great work over time, to quote a lot of my colleagues. Like, great work over time will, like, eventually, I mean, at least what we're all hoping for is that it leads to it leads to that break. It leads to just continuing to do better work, meeting new people and whatnot. But it's that dream, it's that pursuit. Otherwise, if you're like New York, New York is that kind of place that'll like it weeds out really quickly. Like
Yeah.
if you're not in it, if you're not like vision, like you've got a vision of what you want to be doing. Well, I want to be playing with this orchestra. I want to be making this music with, or making this art with these people, or doing this, or building my own ensemble. Anything. It could be anything underneath the sun. I want to go and do body painting. And in Brighton Beach, whatever. Like, I mean, whatever floats your boat. Like, just not musicians or visual artists, but just everything. If you don't have that vision, then yeah, the coffee shop in New York is no different than the coffee shop in Dubuque.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, run out of here. I mean, my overhead for New York is astounding.
Yeah.
And they're like on a daily basis, I get reminders like, if you were doing this in Montana, this would be like an eighth of the cost.
And you would probably be one of like 2 guys in the region who did it, so you'd be making a shit ton of money.
But part of me is, whether you listen to Frank or Liza, like, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere.
Yeah.
It's like, I grew up in Chicago in the Midwest,
Mm-hmm.
but coming out to study in a second master's with Mike Lowenstern at Manhattan School of Music, like, it was my gateway into New York. It was like, and then once, like, I can, like, taking lessons out here on the few trips I made before going to school, I remember getting off the train or getting off the plane and just being like I get chills like right now talking about it, because it's like, it's New York. There's like, I have a lot of friends that like get burnt out in New York, but when I'm flying, I'm building more work out in Chicago right now. But when I fly into LaGuardia, which I live 10 minutes away from here in Astoria for a few more minutes, there, like, and I land in that marine terminal, and it's that little Delta shuttle that seats 100 people. I get so excited. I get excited talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
I get into my cab. I get home. I drop my stuff off. I take a deep breath. I'm like, I couldn't imagine doing this anywhere else.
There's something particularly, it's good. If you're flying in right around sunset, like, there's literally nothing better.
It's the best.
Like, it's kind of, how long have you been in the city? Like,
it's coming on this August. It'll be 6 years.
6 years. Yeah, I've been in the city for about the same amount of time. I moved here for the first time in August of 2010.
Yeah,
so same
exactly.
same amount of time. And I don't know. There's something about this community, and the people. I don't know if the people who burn out like don't have that connection, whether they were here for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But there's something about it that,
reasons.
like, if you're committed to making a mark here, it's a little different. You have to have something different driving you.
You have to be willing to take risk.
Yeah.
And being uncomfortable. The number one thing in my experience is the comfortability of New York. Like, if you're not willing to take risks and jump, or like leap without looking, and like, I mean, you call them calculated risks, call them weighed risks, but being uncomfortable, being outside, like having that out, like pulling your skin off, like kind of moment, if you're not willing to have that and just push through, then it's all for naught out here, because you will be you will be sitting in that coffee shop 6 years later going, okay, now what? Like, what's next?
Yeah. And even the funny thing is even I would even submit that even people who don't necessarily burn out and stay here, like, there's a huge community of people, and I don't like this is I have to be careful because I'm kind of treading on. But there's a community of people, musicians and artists in the city who are in the age ranges of, like, I don't know, let's say 30 to 50. And they can call themselves professional musicians.
Sure.
And they are, because they do pay their rent playing music.
Sure.
Or teaching music, whatever. But it's there's a real danger, because there, in a weird way, there is so much work here. You know, you can fill up your schedule with these $40 to $50 a service things
Absolutely.
that aren't really that great, you can coast. You can coast as a freelancer in New York.
Absolutely.
You can. It's weird because like you think, oh, it's this huge risk to move here and make it music with you. You know, you have your. I don't think we've even mentioned this like explicitly yet, but your photography business, whatever it is, like you can make the risk of moving here to like throw your hat in the ring.
Absolutely.
But that's not the last risk you have to take.
No.
Like you can't just, you know, maybe it is saying no to $250 one, you know, over, you know, to a $250 gig 1 week because you can stay home and really woodshed something that might get you a, you know, $1,500
Sure.
gig maybe 3 months down the road. I don't know. It depends. It's so like it's so difficult to pinpoint like the exact way to do it right because everyone does it. Like all like the most successful people, they all did it right, quote unquote, differently. You know.
There is no one way. There's no one right way to do it.
Yeah, and it's a situation like it's hard to teach. Like if you're studying orchestral music, if you're studying with so and so orchestral instrumentalist in so and so ginormous successful orchestra, they will probably teach you their one way.
Absolutely.
And it worked for them because obviously they won their job and they're really good. But in a freelance community, it doesn't work like that.
Not exactly. There's no. I mean, there are definitely formulas to working like here in New York, or I mean, not even New York. Like I don't mean to be biased in New York. We're two New Yorkers out here, but like, regardless if you're in Chicago, or you're in Florida, you're in Omaha, you're wherever. Like there are different ways about doing it. I mean, and like I hate the idea like the right way. It's like no, it's just a way at the end of the day. So regardless of, I mean, there are choices that need to be made, and I think the biggest hang up is when I'll throw fate or I'll throw destiny or whatever to make the decisions for me rather than taking ownership of them myself.
Yeah, and once you take ownership of it, and I mean, yeah, if you talk to anyone who has made it big, quote unquote, they'll generally say, "Oh, I was really lucky here, and I was really lucky there," and there is an element of that. But those people who quote unquote got lucky, they worked their asses off.
Yeah.
So that when their lucky break came, they wouldn't need a second one. They wouldn't need a second lucky break because they took advantage of the first one. Anyway, so getting this kind of like building off this idea of taking risks with your career and with your lifestyle, whatever. Like you worked, you know, as a photographer to pay the bills and such, you know, when you moved here.
Sure.
But you started your own studios.
Yeah.
And how long ago was that?
It was about 3.5 years ago.
3.5 years ago. So, you know, why? Like, what was it about that time period that made you decide that this is the right time to take this risk? And you know, I've been doing this. I've been making money, shooting weddings, doing whatever.
Yeah.
You know, doing whatever. What is it that has made you decide to be like, okay, now is the time to start my. You know, there's thousands of photographers here in the city. Like it's just like there are thousands of clarinetists or thousands of trombone players.
Right.
You know what. It's a scary thing to like because much like music, photography is very expensive. It just is like it's a big outlay up front.
Yeah, I looked at a medium format camera with one of my colleagues and good friends, Daniela, yesterday, and the camera that we're looking at is either going between like 10 and 15,000 for this investment for the next step in the studio work. So yeah, it's and between the bass clarinet, the two clarinets, my E flat, it's just, and then the space. Yeah, it's definitely not cheap. But to answer your question, there's no right time. That's the other thing. It's just like there comes a boiling point, a tipping point, to quote Malcolm Gladwell, when you kind of hit that ceiling. No different than moving out of here into Manhattan. No different than moving into, okay, I'm not going to do the $50 gigs anymore. Unless there's like incredible value behind it, whether it's great music, great people, or great pay. Those are the three criteria most people work off of here. In music at least. The thing with the studio was and a lot with clarinet the same way. I don't like being the idea. I don't like the idea of a hired gun as a freelancer. There comes a point, at least in my career with the other businesses I've started, where you want, like with a studio and even with your own performance practice, you want a little bit more control. So what, like, if you're an ensemble, if you're a instrumentalist or a vocalist or just a musician, starting your own ensemble gives you a little bit more of that control. No different than building a photography studio. A photography studio says, okay, I'm not photographing everything underneath the sun. Like a photographer, like when people say, I mean, how I interpret when I interpret being a photographer, for a lot of people it just means, well, I photograph whatever people call me to do, or I do this, or I do 20 different things, and they don't do them really well, or not well, depending on who the photographer is. For me though, to start a studio, I realized I couldn't do events. I couldn't really do events anymore. Like I love shooting performance. So if you get me into a theater, and a cabaret, a large orchestra, a small group, dancers, I love all that. I love expression with the body, the mind, the spirit, like poetry readings, all that stuff. That stuff gets me excited. But what doesn't, not to say that there's anything wrong with this, but like there's a formula after a while of shooting weddings. Like if I have to shoot another pair of Jimmy Choo shoes, I think I might go insane. No, but that's not to say that like a lot of people like lose themselves in the moment. And for me, that shooting weddings is no different than working an office job. It was no different than being a barista, because it was a means to an end. And the studio for me was to say, okay, look, well, it's a commitment where there's like, it's no different than me saying, like, asking you, like, what's the dream? Like for me, it's like I want to be a photographer out in New York. Well, what the hell does that mean? I want to be a clarinetist out in New York. Great, now you're here. Now what? It's like
you're just gonna go play klezmer on the street corner.
Exactly.
Like what does that even mean?
What does that mean? Like, oh, I'm a photographer in New York. I was out with my uncle last night and some colleagues of his. And talking about the photography studio. Like when you start talking about a studio, whether it's like we specialize in portraiture, we specialize in product photography, or we do specifically food, or we do landscapes, whatever your medium is, just, I mean, and it's applicable to any kind of art form or career for that matter. But once you start focusing in on that, your field of vision becomes more focused, like ironically.
Camera jokes. Yes.
Yeah. Right. Yikes. People are listening to this right now.
Cringing. Just like, oh god.
I went there. But it's the detail. Suddenly, all the decisions that you make with your career, with your life, with all those, suddenly all the decisions that you make. I mean, and from my perspective as an entrepreneur, not only as an artist, but is that everything that you do essentially is in the benefit of that studio and that vision, that dream. Like, I still want to get married, have kids, have the American nuclear life, if you will.
The white picket fence.
Exactly. We all have dreams of that. But meanwhile, while I'm like working on that separately, like, okay, so this investment here, this amount of time with these people, or this money going into this camera, or buying these reeds, switching over to this kind of clarinet, everything, like, is this helping or hurting the vision? Is this helping or hurting the studio? With the studio, in different capacities, I have about 10 different people behind me with it, like, all, like, rooting for me, but also, like, I am helping build their careers. They help build mine. Everybody gets paid, and we're trying to build this utopian environment, which everybody seems to think isn't possible, or at least I hear on a constant basis.
Well, here's the deal.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the idea of whether it's possible is irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
It's and if nothing else, even if it isn't possible, I think that makes it all the more important to keep working towards it.
I get more excited when people tell you can't, or that's ridiculous, or that's strange. For me, it's fuel, because I mean, essentially, you're doing something that most people aren't, and so it has a higher likelihood of, like, with your passion, dedication, with that vision to break out. Yeah, it might not, like, my mentors in my financial team are always constantly reminding me, like, look, we're living, like, I'm living the dream. The businesses, they're all building, but at the end of the day, it just might not be in that timeline. And that's the thing, whether you're in whatever city you're in, it's no different than being that barista. There's nothing wrong with being a barista. I want to be perfectly. I keep using this as an example.
Yeah, well, it's the most common one for musicians here in New York at the current moment.
Well, you're actor, actress, waiting tables.
Yeah.
Or you're doing part-time modeling.
/ porn.
Well, yeah, exactly. Fantastic. Part-time porn. Fantastic. Hi, Mom. That's the thing. It's regardless of what you're doing, like, it's affording you the means to continue doing your art, art form, your craft, to keep going out there and knowing. I mean, like, I've been out here 6 years. I still do a little freelance publishing work, like, also, like, for a myriad of reasons, but also it's just like, you do what makes you happy. You never work a day in your life. I know it's still cliche. I mean, but if you like making coffee and practicing, great, do that. But if you're miserable, like trading stocks, like on Wall Street, but making a ton of money, like, don't do that. Like, I can't tell you how many photographers, especially, that I've met after all these years that were like, yeah, I used to, I was a hedge funder, or I was a day trader, or I worked for Goldman Sachs, and I'm like, I burn out, so I decided to do this.
One of my old roommates from a few years ago, he graduated from Texas A&M, immediately got a job pulling in big money for Citibank here, here in the city. Worked there 3-4 years, to almost, like, destroyed him, like, absolutely hated it.
Money doesn't buy you happiness.
He quit, got a job for Seamless, made, like, less than half of what he was making before, was super happy, got married, like, the whole thing, like, he was just like, oh my god, my life is just so much better, because now I'm doing something that I like. Numbers are my thing, but I'm doing numbers for someone that something that I love, as opposed to making a ton of money and working 80 hours a week and being drunk all the time.
That's exactly it. And I'm like, if you like, I'm not saying anything different in this interview that anybody else hasn't said. I'm saying it in my own way, something different from me, from my perspective. But that, at the end of the day, that's everything. Like, money is a conveyance. It's a means to provide more for whatever makes you happy. But if money is that sole piece of happiness, then we really need to evaluate how we educate in this country.
So with the, it's funny, when I met you, we were doing Nutcracker for Garden State Philharmonic. Ironic, still haven't gotten paid for that.
I got paid for that. I didn't get paid for New Year's yet. If you're listening, New York Phil,
If you're listening to New York Phil, pay me.
Pay me. Garden State, we'd like to get paid.
We really would.
It's
been 3.5 months. Anyway, but we met, and I think Dave Whitwell had introduced us, and I was like, oh, Alex. And then we were just talking, and then you're like, oh yeah, I have this photography studio, and I was like, oh
yeah,
and I'm sure you get that a lot when you're on gigs, and because a lot, over the past 12 months, as far as me personally, like, is when I started seeing people like always posting these photos, and I'm like, man, these look really, really good. And I was like, who's this?
What's this Karjaka? What is this?
Wait, is that Karjaka?
Karaoke? What's going on?
Yeah, like
he's Japanese, right?
I just assumed you were like some Russian dude, like
yeah,
out in the outskirts, and just took really great pictures. And then I met you, I was like, this is not the guy that I was expecting. Great. No, I feel...
Great, good. I like that. Good feedback.
But you've really, at least from what I've seen, and I'm not saying what I see is the end all. You know, the only things that exist are things that I see. But no, a lot of people that I know and people that I want to know, like have come to you, musicians in particular, for your photographic services.
Sure.
And have been really happy with the product. I'm just curious about, you know, as a musician and a photographer and one who makes money doing both. Like, let me kind of reset this for a second. As a musician, I personally like the idea of not only when I'm playing, I don't want to be thinking about the way someone else has played what I'm playing. Like, I don't necessarily, my first instinct isn't to go anymore. It used to be. My first instinct is no longer to go and be like, okay, I'm playing this solo or whatever. I'm going to go listen to this iconic soloist in my instrument play this solo. Or if I'm working on something that's not for trombone, a lot of what I like to think about or work with or work from is, you know, literature that influences me, art that influences me, you know, architecture has always been a big one for me.
Yeah.
Or even just elements from different styles of music. If I'm playing Bach, I'll, you know, a Bach dance, I will be thinking about maybe a folk band that plays, you know, a similar line in a similar way. You know, so there's just like a lot of these art forms, or the fact that I love Basquiat.
Yeah.
You know, adore Basquiat. How do I work what, you know, his brash, like hip hop, like 100% hardcore American style into what I'm doing with a piece from the 19th century. Now, I say all of that to kind of bring it around from the other side. You know, as a photographer working in another very subtle art form, like how do your music lives and how does your music life and your photography life, two different art forms that are very subtle and very beautiful, like how do those cross over and interact? Like, does one influence? Do they influence each other? Like,
absolutely,
constantly, or how does that work?
I mean, there is no line. There's a lot of gray.
Grayscale?
Yeah, I did not mean it like that, but thank you.
There you go.
Oh my goodness.
It's better if I make the...
You can make that? I'm like...
It's better if I make the terrible photography jokes, because I don't know any better.
That's really good. Yikes. I do work a lot in grayscale. I know that's very true. Well, here's the real thing is that the two mutually influence one another very much in my life. I you know, playing clarinet is very similar to how I photograph my clients, and likewise, like photographing regardless, like a concert person like in the studio here is a lot like playing clarinet. It's a lot like making music with an ensemble or teaching a lesson. Like for me, photography is like you learn to listen with your ears. Or listen with your idiot.
I was like, wow, this is going to get a lot deeper than I thought.
No, you learn to listen with your eyes.
Okay, there we go. That makes more sense.
Exactly, like walked right into that.
But Well, I say that makes more sense. Like, what does that mean?
That means that it's not what the client is saying, it's what they're not saying. It's what they're saying in their body language. It's the little hiccup in their voice when they talk about X, or, you know, it's that subtle moment, that sigh, that breath, all those key elements that we take for granted or not, depending, like in a rehearsal, that little prep before we perform. That little, like, that subtle glance from the conductor saying, okay, this is your moment here, take the ball. Like, I'm getting chills just talking about it, because like all that subtle nuance that makes the experience of music is directly applicable. Like, suddenly it's not so much like anybody can take a photograph, and I'm not the first person to figure out that. Like, I've been doing photography like in some form or fashion for the last 20 years. Like, growing up with a father who's a fantastic photographer, building an eye, studying with other photographers, being just immersed in the art form. It's not like I just decided to pick up a camera one day.
You weren't playing with your filters on Instagram
and said like,
like,
oh,
toast is the best,
Yeah.
and now I'm gonna be a professional photographer.
exactly. So, but you know, and if you are that gal or guy, that's great. That's fantastic. I think what brings my photography or my clarinetistry to a higher level is the fact that I'm able to take the two and merge them into something that nobody else is able to create. And to be able to take, regardless of what I'm photographing, I don't photograph with judgment or bias. Like, I photograph musicians the same way I photograph CEOs or, you know, anybody on the street. It's all the same. It's still the same tools, the same skill set. But it's like it's about, regardless of music or photography or art, it's being with people. That is such a key element. We go into these rehearsals, and whether we're prepared or not, we're like, it's like, well, I'm gonna do this, or I'm gonna make sure that this sounds really good when I play this right here, blah blah blah. And a lot of times we forget, like, no, there are 10 other people in this ensemble, or if you're in a quartet or quintet or whatever, or duo, it's about melding together, like really listening to, like, okay, so oboe's doing this, soprano's like feeling this, and I'm there to cup the situation. I come in like I'm gesturing here on radio as if people could see me. I love it.
It's pretty standard for visual art forms to carry over into audio. It works really well.
Exactly. I'm Italian, Ukrainian, so it's like I'm always talking with my hands to begin with. Fantastic. But that's the thing. It's like all that nuance, all that, like, just being in the moment. Like, you're conveying what's on the page, but also the people around you are creating that, like, we're building that art together. Like, when somebody comes in the studio here, like, the number one thing I get is, hi, my name is so and so, I hate having my photograph taken, and this is going to be the worst experience ever for you. I can't tell you how excited I get to take photographs after hearing that.
Well, because and it's just like with bringing someone's a musical style or piece that someone has always said that they hated, and like totally changing their perceptions of what a rewarding experience it can be for everyone involved.
Well, the thing is, you have to be willing to let down your guard to really explore, and that, like, in the studio, that can be often difficult. Sometimes it takes 5 minutes, sometimes it takes 20 or 30 minutes. But once you let down that guard, you're able to be yourself and just be essentially vulnerable. No different than being vulnerable to hearing that piece of music that, like I know a lot of people that hate minimalism, or like me, like my biggest thing is, like, I was, until about 3 or 4 years ago, like, rap wasn't really a thing for me. Like, but like, I found a friend of mine introduced me to Sugar Hill Gang and, like, gave me, like, the kind of etymology of its existence of rap. And then, like, I was in the studio the other day, and, like, Drake was on, because one of my assistants put on Drake, like, I Call You On Myself, and I'm like, that's R&B, but I'm like, or whatever this is, I'm like, all right, yeah, no, I got this. Or like Eminem, whatever. It's like, it takes, it's like learning it's like you've drank bad scotch your entire life, right? You've drank, or you're drinking like Jack Daniels. No offense to anybody that drinks Jack Daniels, but eventually when you start, like, somebody introduces you to, oh, there's this better blend or this single malt, or hey, we have bourbon, and then that exploration, it's just like
Yeah.
there's that level of vulnerability. So this, to bring it back with like making music, like that vulnerability of that client to be in front of the camera, and I have to know what he or she is going through, because that's how we talk. It's a conversation. I'm not like, all right, do this if I need to, or if I'm doing a fashion shoot, yeah, sure, I pose when I need to. I pose and manipulate as needed. But when you're with a portrait, it's that experience that you being with the other person evokes. It's more evocative than just saying do this, do that.
And there are so many. I mean, you see it literally every single day. And in a situation in a art form like music, or something I'm a big fan of playing for, in particular, is musical theater. You know, you deal with all these young actors, singers, dancers, and you just see hundreds of just terrible portraits and headshots literally every single day. Graduation photos, whatever it is.
Everybody's a photographer.
It's and a lot of people make money
Sure.
taking bad photos.
No different than musicians that are bad musicians taking up good work.
Yeah, that's true. It's just a thing that happens, and I don't necessarily begrudge those people. I am annoyed at them and a little bit jealous, but like I'm not. If people, there are some people that I know that there are people that I know who aren't very good and get really good work, and I'm just like, great. You know what? You do that, and
you can't get.
And when you slip up, I'm gonna be right fucking there.
Well, that's good.
That's pretty dark.
We're getting a little dark here. I mean, there, like you said, there's a whole lot of luck, and I mean, like to quote Jefferson, like to be like, I'm extremely lucky. I'm like, it's the preparation that goes into that being lucky, and the idea that like, look, we all, like, some of us, we all have places to start out. Like, when I switched over from film into digital, it was not a good transition. I did not do very well. And I was, like, 5-6 years ago, still trying to figure this whole thing out and think through it. Like, okay, and I got paid for photo shoots 5 years ago, and you're just sitting going, oh my God, I can't believe I got paid. I mean, there are photo shoots, there are music gigs that, it's at one point, like, even in the past year, we all can go through, like, and go, I can't believe I got paid for that, for whatever, because it's not to say that the quality was bad or wasn't representative of who we are, but our taste, to quote Ira Glass, like, our taste is so much higher that it's like, at some point, like, you start breaking into what you think you are or what you want to be, but meanwhile your taste gets higher and higher because the quality, you study it more, you're in it more, so now you're even more hypersensitive to poor quality work.
Yeah, I was talking on the phone to Dave Whitwell yesterday, and we were just he had some stuff we needed to talk about, but we were just kind of like shooting the shit on the phone. And and I was kind of like just talking to him about, like, we were just being friends, kind of like we are. And I said, I'm working a lot, but I'm just like, I'm still like, every day I'm afraid that I'm gonna end up being like, I'm 26 now, so I'm gonna end up being like sick.
So young.
Yeah, whatever. but I'm still afraid with how, as hard as I work, being 6-7 years from now, basically being in the same bracket that I am now with people who whatever, just like still kind of slogging away for the same kind of shit for the next 6-7 years. And we were talking about this guy Joel Weiss, who played, like, we were talking about him earlier. He plays on King and I. Yeah. He was the principal trombone of 2 different orchestras in Paris at the same time.
Yeah.
Only guy to ever do that.
I remember Dave saying that. Yeah. Telling me the story.
Right. So, we were just talking. I was just like, man, I love playing with him. He just sounds so great.
Mhm.
Like and he's really, he's fun to be around. He's a really nice guy.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, then you got to realize the dude's 51.
Yeah.
Like, he's been doing this for longer than either of us have been alive.
Yeah.
And yeah, he sounds really fucking good.
He should.
And yeah, I mean, and he's worked, like again, he's worked at it longer than you and I have been alive.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just lucky enough that we can play with him on a semi-regular basis.
Exactly.
Kind of a thing. Like, you generally don't have access to players like that on a regular basis.
Oh.
In the freelance community, it's more common because
Yeah.
we're all like in the same pool. But
Exactly.
maybe some of us are in the shallower end. But anyway, I don't remember why I got into that. But backtrack. I really don't remember why. There was a reason, but I don't remember what it was.
The younger, the novices taking up more, like those people, like
it is. It ends up. It is what it is. That's like that stupid thing. But
yeah,
it kind of is true. You just kind of have to deal with.
You can't be worried about the path. I mean, we're all worried about the path. Let's face it. I mean, you're 26. I'm 31. Like, I thought my clarinet career would have been a lot bigger than it is right now. That's not to say I'm not happy with it. Mm-hmm. It just means it is where it is. It's like, it's all, and I totally understand this. Like, especially being, like, having nearly 2 master's degrees. The thing is, like, we get so wrapped up in the end result. What's the end goal? Like, we get that orchestral job, but we can't see past the orchestral
mm-hmm.
job. We get to play, like, we get to take these photographs. We get to have this gallery. We get to have this reading, this publication. Okay, that's all really great, but we're worried so much about that we're not enjoying, we're not worried, but we're not spending more time with that journey. With that, like, you look at Joel, 51, to play Broadway after playing 2 orchestras back to back in Paris, like, and just to see, it's more about having a full life. It's
mm-hmm.
more about experiencing as much as you can, like, rather than like, this will make me happy. Like, I remember when I bought my first clarinet, like, that really made me happy, and then I was just like, I've grown out of this clarinet, now I'm not happy. No, I need to, it's like, but when you first get like for me, that first camera, like, I sold a car, like, to get that camera, and then suddenly it's like, it's so exciting because it's a gateway, but
mm-hmm.
And you enjoy the journey with it, but eventually it's just like, there's progressions, your tastes change. But that's not to say that, like, it's no different than, like, money. When people work specifically for money, it's like, it kind of corrupts in a sense. It doesn't make you enjoy, like, if you enjoyed trading as much as you did making the money trading, you wouldn't leave trading. You wouldn't, no different than, like, I play a lot of gigs right now that don't pay a ton of money, but, like, I like the people in the gig.
Mm-hmm.
The music's pretty good, and the audience, the experience, like, the audience is everything,
mm-hmm.
right? Because it's very self-serving. I like playing with these people for the money, but at the end of the day, it's the culture that we're trying to provide in a
mm-hmm.
larger aspect, and New York has got a very small-minded view of it. But if you're not enjoying all that, no amount of auxiliary or ancillary, like, benefits is going to make practicing any better.
Yeah.
Like,
that's true. It's funny, even actually earlier, still this week, right? It's Thursday. Yeah, God.
Thursday. Yeah.
So I've earlier this week I had 2 different I've played 2 different shows this week. Well, 3 if you count Sunday, but whatever. Hello, Dolly.
Yeah.
Hello, Dolly.
It's a great.
For all of the awards,
It's a great show.
the more I played it, the more I liked it.
Yeah.
But I found out this one thing, and I've realized this before, but it really, when you play those old, like, those, like, 1955 to 1965, like, traditional,
Rodgers and Hammerstein.
Not Rodgers and Hammerstein, whatever. But like shows like Hello Dolly that are solidly within that like 50s, very Sinatra influenced kind of like lounge band, like big bandy type of shows. I have a real weakness for the big showstopper songs with the full cast, the soloist, and a kick line. It gets me every single goddamn time. So like we're playing, you know, and Hello Dolly has like the first trombone part on the title song is actually really good, and you know it's just like it wasn't. I mean, there were some good musicians in the pit. It's a high school production. Yeah. It was whatever, but like every time we played like the big song, every time we did it, I'm just like, God, I love this. And I'm playing there with another trombonist who's like doesn't like musical theater that much.
It's a bummer.
But he's he's one of my closest friends. Like I love the guy. He's a great musician, but he's a big new music guy.
Yeah.
I had him come up with me to do the show because you know it's money. It was paying pretty well.
Yeah, good.
And but I'm like, but he kind of makes me feel a little guilty about loving these songs, and I'm just
that's the worst.
No. I mean, I'm gonna love what I love. I don't give a shit. But like every time we did that thing, I'm just like, oh, this is so great. Anyway, that was not why I was talking about my shows earlier this week. The real reason, I'm probably gonna cut all that out. The real reason was I did a show Monday night and a show Tuesday night. Monday night was a rock show with a really good friend of mine. He was my first roommate when I moved up to the Bronx. Love the guy.
Yeah.
I've known him for a really long time. For probably 9 years now. And he's a really good songwriter, great performer. And we're playing Rockwood Stage 1.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean it's a tiny venue.
I'd never been. I dated this girl for a hot minute and got to experience Rockwood, and it changed my life.
It's cool. It's a cool joint. Yeah. Like when it's crowded and hopping, it's a really energetic. Oh, yeah. It's a really good energy. They don't pay the musicians, but not for a Stage 1. Anyway, but like you know, I've played some really crowded shows there, but it was a Monday night. The weather was bad. There wasn't a whole lot of people there. There was probably 30, 35 people.
Yeah.
Maybe less, probably closer to 25. We played the show, went really good, even though I like left all my music on my music stand, had to use my laptop to pull up the charts because they're pretty intricate. I don't have it memorized, which is my problem. But two band members who had never played with us before, I play with him pretty much every time he plays, so it's like I know the songs and stuff. But two band members who never played with us before, like. I forgot my music. I'm using my laptop to pull up these charts. Yeah, like it's just kind of a mess, but it was great. Like probably the first 4 or 5 songs, probably the best like as far as I'm concerned. Like it was one of the best times we'd ever sounded.
Yes,
in spite of like some weird things happening with the piano player. It was the new guy. I was like, I don't know, but it was really great. Like, the guy's voice was on point. Like. We were playing really well. Then the next night, I played a concert, and of course, Rockwood doesn't pay. You get a drink ticket.
Great, congrats.
Next night, I played for Manus. They hired me to do all their concerts.
Yeah.
Pays pretty well. Like it pays.
Yeah, I was in Chicago for that gig, right? Wait.
No, that's something different. That's something I contract for. That's a different thing. No, this is for the Manus College Orchestra. Like so, this past Tuesday, I played. It was a concert of music by student composers, which is always kind of a crapshoot. They're young, whatever. That's fine. Yeah. But it was just a slog. Like I didn't enjoy the pieces. I didn't enjoy the performance. But it was $125 for the concert. It's $75 for each of the rehearsals. Like, yeah. But the next day, I got an email from the dude I did the rock show with, and he's like, "There's a lady in the front who was crying. She emailed me, or she messaged me, reached out to me. I was like, our music really helped her through a tough time she's having. Like she let me know, and I was just like, yes. I knew we felt like it felt good. Like what we were doing felt really great. Yeah. And I didn't get paid for it, and I loved it. It was great.
It's the best.
And I would take that experience 100 times over playing some music that I'm not really into. for $125. Now, if it was like $500, you know, then it would probably shift a little bit because of money. But you know, that's you know, I realize I've been talking nonstop for like the past 5 minutes, but like it's really what we're talking about. This idea of like really, and it keeps popping up through over the past hours. Like when you're really doing like really focusing in on what's the dream, you know,
What's the
it is really moving people with our art.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that's playing second clarinet on Nutcracker in a pit in Tom's River, wherever the frick that was in New Jersey, or whether that's shooting a really interesting all-female brass quintet, or you know, like made up of some very strong personalities.
I love the gals.
They're so fun. Or you know, or whether it's me playing a rock show, you know, for no money on a Monday night on a rainy Monday night in a bar with 25 people in it. You know, like it's those moments that kind of get you through the rest of it.
Yeah, or you gotta like you said,
you have to at least hold on to those moments to get you through the. Oh great! I'm doing another god awful orchestra gig.
Right. I mean,
for hardly any money.
Yeah, for $67 and a really long commute. But that's the thing. If you can't find the joy in those little moments, regardless of your art form or craft, then the bigger moments will never live up to it. It will never provide you the satisfaction that you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
To be able to have that cathartic moment for that woman, to have that release and just make great music. I mean, okay, we're not getting paid. That's not a new thing. But that experience, like if you can enjoy that and not be jaded, like I can't tell you how many gigs we do where you walk in with people that are just burnt out, like because we're getting paid this, we're doing this, we're not getting what we deserve or what we're like, or the value of who we are.
What we think we deserve, at least.
Right, exactly. I mean, that photography for me at least provides the ability to not really be so like focused on all that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I got to play with American Ballet Theater at 29 and sitting next to one of my idols, John Manassi. John was just like, look, you got the best gig in the world. I said, what do you mean? He said, like, you don't have to worry about like this being a job. He's like, at the end of the day, I still have to go back to Eastman, teach lessons, I have to do all these gigs. And you know, it's like you work, like it becomes a job when you start looking at all the work that you do and you break it down into, okay, I've worked on this for how many hours for this amount of pay. You go insane. Like if I did that with photography, I mean, I'd have to do it to a certain extent.
I feel like there are people who need reports on such things.
Yeah, my backers need that. So, but if you broke it down to every minute of every hour of every day, like you would forget the arts. Just get out. Just leave now. But so it's like, but that cathartic moment, that is more valuable than anything. Like you can't put a price on that. And so it's like you obviously it's, you know, you pick and choose your battles, and as you get older, the quality of musician, the quality of gig presumably goes up, and with that you get a little bit more freedom, a little bit more choice in the matter, as opposed to when you're just starting out here in New York. You will play for anybody underneath the sun, because networking is the name of the game. And that's, you know, that's true for anything that we do. Yeah. Networking, it's, you know, you can have all the talent in the world, but if you're doing it in a vacuum, difference doesn't make. And the same thing is, like, I'm finding that's very clear, especially with the last 2 years of this photography studio, especially. It's like, you know, it's a lot of what you know is great, but it's who you know, it's what you're putting out there, who you're engaging, your audience. It's a lot of different things, but at the very core of it, to bring it back, that woman crying in the first row because your music spoke to her, or people seeing my imagery, or like me playing like a solo, like a lyric line on clarinet or bass that cuts through the entire orchestra that has some sort of impact, I'm not thinking, well, that line was about 4250 right there. Plus those 7 other notes, that's about 2695, and then I ended on 220. You know, it's like, I mean, nobody thinks like that.
Yeah, because that's crazy.
Because that's crazy. But it's crazy that we think as artists the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, that focus on money. I'm not like, I do a ton of pro bono work to the chagrin of most of my team, but at the same time it provides what my work provides in whatever capacity has a larger impact that, I mean, it comes back in any form, whether it's fulfillment, their fulfillment, money, etc.
Yeah. 21st century, it's become more and more important for, especially for like these kind of freelance, like individual, you know, musicians and other artists kind of have to view themselves as brands, like personal brands, in a way.
Absolutely.
And now for you, that has manifested itself not only in music, but obviously as a visual artist, photographer, and it's become a kind of a situation where this entrepreneurial spirit has become vital to musicians and artists of any kind, really. And now they kind of at least at Manus, like, it's now a required class. Like, these entrepreneurship classes are required in your master's degree because they've, about 15 years too late, have started to realize that it's freaking important. Like, you can't just expect to practice until you win an audition, because even if you do win an audition, you might be playing in an orchestra that's pays $20,000 a year because it's not full time.
Yeah.
Right. So, like, talk, you know, if you could, I mean, this Karjaka Studios isn't your first business.
No.
You've had a number of other ones over the past. When was what you told me? How old you were when you started your first one? And I was very young.
Yeah, it was like, 12, 13 when I started. Like, everybody starts mowing lawns, but nobody takes it to the extent that I decided to take it.
But okay, so I mean, you've been kind of, you know, had this mindset ever since you were, like, you know, preteen.
Yeah, my parents tried to not have me do that. They didn't want me to work.
So over, I guess, like quick math. So over the last 19, almost 20 years,
nearly
basically,
20 years, yeah.
You've been kind of in the entrepreneurial mindset.
Absolutely.
In multiple facets of your life. Like, how has, I mean, and I don't, like, there's only so much we can go into, and I don't want this to go on too much longer, because, you know, time constraints for both of us. But why did you even start doing that early, and how has, like, this kind of grown into, like, into where you are now? I mean, you've been this business you've had for 3.5 years, like, like, that's just inconceivable to me, even though a lot of the most successful men in the world, you know, like the rags to riches guys, most of them, you know, kind of started doing that when they were right around that same age, that 12 to 15 age range. Like, that's just kind of how it goes.
It's just like, it's kind of a bug.
Yeah. Anyway, the point being, like, how has that developed into where you are now, like, you a business owner in New York City, kind of thing?
Well, I think the big thing is, and, you know, we've talked a lot about this in this last hour, is like the whole, I mean, the money issue. Like, I was making more money, I mean, if you look at inflation and growth, in landscaping and the quote unquote 13 to my early 20s of doing it and doing odd jobs and you know, construction work and whatnot. I was making money much easier, much more. There was a much better market for it, but I wasn't like, I mean, I was happy, I liked doing it, but it wasn't, I didn't have the same passion that I had for music. I like, when you get into college, people like you have to make decisions, especially about music, immediately.
Yeah.
No different than being a doctor. Like if you're pre-med, like you do everything. I mean, you're on the track, and they don't tell you all that BS in the brochure that they give you when you go and tour the college. But all that to say, when you decide to go to college, like, and you choose music, suddenly it's like it's no different than like you have to find the thing that you're most passionate about that you can't live without. So me, it was music. But that didn't mean that for a lot of people it means that okay, music's the only thing we're going to do and we're just going to stay really focused on that. I think it's a terrible idea. I think it's a 1950s principle of education that's widely outdated in this country, and yet we continue to foster it until recently with our desperate efforts to build an entrepreneurialism. The big thing is the fact that like that was still a part of me, like building those other businesses, building that time. So rather than being a barista, to say, and not using those skills, why not bring that into my clarinet playing and my music making, into my photography? I was a graphic designer for years. My good friend Tina Bunce got me started off of that, and I started building off side projects with that out here in New York to get started. And then publishing. I did a little bit of engraving work. All this to say, the entrepreneurialism was a gateway. It was another tool in the toolkit to continue doing the number one passion, which is to make art, regardless of art form. I had parents that, my mother's a project manager for the Northern Trust, and I won't go into that. My father, is a visionary, like visual artist in itself. And they fostered environment. They were artists of their own kind. It was Baryshnikov that said that artistry, the highest form of a person in their field, is the artist, regardless of it's like visual arts, sound arts, or being like an accountant.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like you can be an artist with numbers, or with a scalpel, or with children, or whatever. So the thing is, they were artists of their own crafts, their own fields, and for me to meld that and see that and be able to bring that into entrepreneurialism, into the arts, that I was very blessed and lucky, essentially, to have that kind of upbringing, so that when I got to college and my master's degrees, the plural, the idea that this whole thing of entrepreneurialism and the way they were teaching it was just backwards, or not backwards. It was no different than the teachers that you study with. This is how this worked for me, or these are proven techniques with these people. But in a broad scope, from my, at the time, 10, 15 years of doing what I did, like that didn't work for me. And so entrepreneurialism there, I mean, you could listen to Gary Vaynerchuk all day, or read Bob Levy's book, or all these different books on entrepreneurialism, and follow social media and all that. But if that doesn't excite you, if that doesn't if that isn't a part of who you are, forcing it to is not going to make it any easier. Taking courses over at Manus, while incredibly valuable for the artist that knows nothing about that, the life experience is going to be that entrepreneurial teaching. That's going to be that tool, that guide. It's not something like, for me, I have a very inquisitive mind. I'm savvy, in that sort of thing. I love working with my hands. When you work 60, 70-hour weeks, you have to.
Yeah.
But it's a funny thing, because there's no, getting back to what we were talking about earlier, there's no right or wrong way about doing it. I just think that our current way may not be helping the future of colleges, a future of artists in this country as well as we'd like to think it is.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's a little heavy.
The funniest thing about musicians and people who want to start their own projects and blah blah blah, there's always, one of the biggest things is these arts companies are going out of business, and this is like failing and this is going under. And so like the prevailing idea is that there's just not money to be made in the arts, which
is a total bullshit conversation.
yeah, I mean, sure, there's not as much money in traditional paths anymore, but there's so many people who just want to throw. There are so many people who want to give away their money.
There's an untapped market of it.
There's people who either like think you can grow their wealth, or who are just looking for a tax break, or just are really love the arts and want to put money into it. Maybe they're not going to be someone. Maybe they're looking for something that isn't the Met Opera, or something that isn't the Carnegie Hall or whatever. People who want to give money away.
Yeah, absolutely.
But want to do it in a way that in a new and exciting way.
That's our job.
There's nothing new and exciting about Carnegie Hall. It's awesome, and it's one of the best. It's one of the best halls in the world. I love playing there.
Same here.
But like it's 100 years. It's freaking old. And
but that's
where
where
and it's. I think I just talked myself into a corner. The point is like Carnegie Hall is representative of an old school approach. Yeah, it's old school establishment, and there's nothing wrong with that, and it's awesome. But like people want to put their money in new, exciting things.
That's the advantage.
You just have to find them.
You have to
and figure out how to sell what you're doing in a way that excites them.
I mean, that's the age old question. And the thing is, with all these students coming out, I mean, we're still pumping out more musicians, more artists than the market will bear. Yeah, great. But that is the challenge for the future. Like that kind of like a lot of people tell me I will stress on the like on their students like who are thinking about going into music or the arts, like, look, it's not going to make a lot of money or blah blah, or like kind of like deter them. And I'm not like, look, you want to go to the arts, great, do it, you'll figure out a way to do it. But it's the younger generations especially that now have it's a harder task. There's no, but
it's not going to come from waiting for someone to hear you.
No, you have to be the one pushing it.
It's probably not going to come from spending 8 hours a day practicing excerpts and auditioning for an orchestra. You might be that 0.5% point, probably less than that.
Yeah, but let's talk about the grand masses.
But you might be part of that, but if you want success and artistic fulfillment, you have to put in the work to make sure your art's good, and then you have to put in the work finding someone who wants it.
Well, it's not so much finding someone who wants it, sure,
or wants to pay for it.
Well, it's those, it's that, to quote my guy Daniele, it's making good art over time. If by you continuing, it's like, look, if you follow me on social media, there is nothing particularly fantastic about how I do it. I try to post a new photo every day on Instagram and Facebook. I tag people, I tag myself, I do a little blurb. Every so often, at the beginning of the year, I was putting out a blog post every day, and it seemed to be doing more damage than good, so I backed off of that. But the thing is, it's just that, like you said, after a year of you seeing my work, here we are doing this interview after oh, you're the Karjaka. No, I'm holding a clarinetist. I'm holding a clarinet, but you're the photographer. Yeah. But I get that all the time.
Yeah.
But that's by me putting out quality work, no different than building a festival, no different than building an ensemble, a podcast, for example, this podcast. If you were putting out a poor product, people wouldn't be listening. We wouldn't be doing this.
Right.
But your viewership is up, etc., etc. So by putting out a great product and something that you're proud of, that's different from other people, that's innovative, that's engaging in a larger audience in ways that isn't the older establishment, you don't copy off of, I'm not copying other photographers. I've got my own style.
Yeah.
By us, that, there's no magic behind that. It's just it's like having that dream, that vision, working through it, seeing and just being willing to take those risks and put it all out there. I mean,
and do it consistently for as long as it takes.
it takes, and it might take, it might hit at 25. A lot of times it hits late 30s. You might hit like, look at the Dos Equis guy, like the most interesting, most interesting man in the world. Like I've read 4 different articles on like LinkedIn, on Business Insider. Like the guy had done like friends with not Ricardo Montalban, Fernando Lamas, like, and he does like he'd been on westerns with John Wayne and all these little bit parts. But his agent, who then became his wife, he interviewed and he had this fantastic voice, and it turned out like they wanted him, but he was too old to be the most interesting man in the world.
And his agent was like,
yeah,
no, you want an older guy.
Yeah,
he's more interesting.
He's more interesting.
I read
Exactly.
that. I think I read the Business Insider one. Yeah.
It was so good though. But he was 51.
Yeah.
He had. I mean, so when you get stuck on the timeline for that guy, like. He is now known, like, I've seen him once on the street, like, I'm like, ah! But he gets stopped by Leonardo DiCaprio, and, it's like, you just don't know when and where it's going to hit, but staying in it, that's like, I mean, I'm not huge on to sports analogies, but, like, staying in the box.
Yeah.
The only way you're going to hit the damn ball is you got to stay in the box. Yeah, you might get hit in the back times, but stay in the box.
Yeah.
Get in there, crowd the plate, hit the damn thing. And it's the same thing here. It's just like I'm happy when people say like I'm leaving New York, because if New York's not the place for you, New York's not the place. It's not like I'm rejoicing, yes, less artists to compete with, but which I know a couple people listening to this are probably like that. But at the end of the day, it's more about like, look, find what makes you happy. Yeah. Like it's not about it's just about putting yourself out there and not being afraid of what it looks like.
So I think that's good.
Yeah.
Alex, thanks so much for doing this.
Hey,
I
it
really
was a pleasure.
appreciate it.
Thank
really
you
fun.
so much.